Hello, Malandanti. Merry Christmas. And let me first start by saying I adore your dog. He is just so cute. I have been wondering a bit how I should respond to your video about vampiric familiars. Because I don't want you to feel that I do not respect your opinions, because I do. And I also think your paradigm is very interesting. But at the same time your videos sort of tick me a bit off. My problem with your video is that you present your view of how magic works as the only valid view there is. So that if anyone don't excuse me, if anyone doesn't view magic the way you do, or don't practice it the way you do, then they live in a fantasy world. Now, there are a lot of very skilled, very recognized occultists who do not think that magic is just using a spirit, or as you call it, a familiar, as an intermediary between the flesh and gods. In fact, in traditional Wicca, this isn't how things are viewed. So yes, while in traditional Wicca the magic that is practiced is seen as coming from the goddess and the god, it's not seen as that a spiritual being is needed as an intermediary. And even in traditional Wicca, while the Wicca religion itself has a dogmatic view on how a Wiccan should practice magic, they do recognize that there are other forms of magic. So that when you say that if you don't view magic the way you do, then you live in a Harry Potter fantasy world. You didn't use exactly those words, but it wasn't that far from it. Then that is a bit unfair to the rest of us. Just to mention a few, like for example Vivian Crowley. She is very recognized, she's very skilled, but her paradigm is that magic is using ritual plays to affect the subconscious, and the subconscious, being so powerful, can then affect the reality in turn. Other occultists who do not share your view would be Aleister Crowley, Garrett Gardner, Israel Regardie. There are so many of them, and more modern people, Scott Cunningham, Don Craig. I could just go on and on. While your paradigm in itself isn't rare, it is definitely not the most common. Now, I think your view of things are very interesting, and I think it's a very good way to organize and form a coherent system of magic. Excuse me. So don't think that I'm saying that your views are wrong or bad in any way, but I disagree that it is the only way to do magic. Your system is a typical spirit model system, and I must admit that being primary in the energy model myself, I sort of get a little bit ticked off when you say that since I don't share your views. I live in a fantasy world. Now, since I am a chaot, I do change my main model of magic and also my paradigm around, but mostly I favor systems based in the energy model. To make it very short, I do not think there are one system of magic. I do not think any of us know how magic works completely. I think that all we can do is find systems that work for us. Now, if using a spirit as an intermediary to create a connection with the gods is a way that works for you, then that is great. But it isn't a way that works for everyone. And there's even a lot of magic that doesn't involve gods at all. It might involve the subconscious. It might involve energy. It might involve seeing the world as information, and manipulating that information is magic. So yes, I have to say that I strongly disagree with your point that anything but your idea of using a familiar as an intermediary between a human being and gods is living in a fantasy world. That being said, I also disagree with your definition of what a familiar is. Now, when it comes to familiars, this is personal opinions, and as such I can only give my personal opinion on it. And your views are as valid as mine. But the way I see it, and which is also the more common way to see familiars, they are either spirits or animals which the occultists form a special magical connection with. This connection is not making the spirit serve you or the animal, and it's not making this animal completely needed tool. It is forming a partnership in magic. To me, it seems like you mix several ideas and concepts into one. Spirit guides, magical animal companions, pets, familiars, servitor spirits, all of it mixed into one and calling it a familiar, and that's fine. It might even be the right way to do it. It's not how I see it. For example, I have owned a lot of pets, and most of them have definitely not been my familiar. And I've even had pets with paranormal abilities. Like I had this dog, his name was Mario, and he would sleep on you and he would absorb your illness. If you're ill, the dog would sleep on you, and the next morning he was sick and you were healthy. Now, of course, we didn't try to force him to do this. No matter what we did, we couldn't stop him. And he was a healer. But he was never my familiar. And my mother has a dog now, which is clearly empathic. And I have definitely learned from him, but he is not a familiar. I have a little cat, and I've tried to form a familiar bond with her, but she doesn't seem responsive. I consider her my magical animal companion. She has paranormal abilities. She does help me in my magic at times, but the bond between um, sorcerer and the familiar just isn't there completely. Then I see that, and I also think that you can have completely spirit familiars. However, a lot of what you describe, I would either put into the category of spirit helper, a spirit guide, a servitor spirit, instead of lumping it all into the category of familiar. However, this is just my opinion on it. My main objection to your video was the idea that if you are not practicing your form of magic or have your views on magic, then it's a fantasy world. Because there are so many paradigms, there are so many views on magic that has formed over centuries that nobody can claim to have the complete truth. Anyway, that is what I wanted to say. Have a continued good Christmas and give your dog a hug for me. Blessed be, and have a nice day.